Candace Owens sat at the view table that morning like she had waited for this moment all year. She was poised, one hand resting lightly on her mug, the other on a stack of notes she barely looked at. Across from her, Joy Behar sat back in her chair, her eyes narrowed, her pen tapping the table with an impatience everyone could feel humming under the bright studio lights. Whoopi Goldberg cleared her throat, trying to set the tone before the sparks flew. Candace Owens is back with us today. She's been on tour promoting her latest book about the state of free speech in America. Candace, you know this table's never shy, so let's get right into it. Why come back here? Candace smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was sharp enough to slice right through the hush the audience didn't even realize they'd slipped into. Because this is where people come to be told what to think. And I think Americans are tired of being told what to think. A low murmur rolled across the audience like a wave hitting a stone wall. Joy rolled her eyes. Oh, please, spare us the martyr act. You get paid quite well to come here and insult us, so let's not pretend you're some hero. Candace's smile widened, eyes locked on Joy. You can call it an insult if it makes you feel better. I call it honesty. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, her pen tapping a rhythm that almost kept the hush steady. Candace, you say you care about free speech. But every time you come here, you use that to push misinformation. You tell people what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. Candace turned to Sunny, her tone turning calm, measured, but heavy enough to crack the hush just a bit more. You think you know what they need to hear? You really believe the people watching are too stupid to decide for themselves? Joy slammed her hand on the table so fast the mug beside her rattled. They need facts, Candace. Facts. Not your half-baked conspiracies. Not your personal grievances you spin into a TED Talk about how persecuted you are. Candace's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. I've never claimed to be persecuted. I claim I have a right to speak. And you have a right to challenge me. But what you don't have is a right to act like your version of the truth is the only one. Whoopi raised her eyebrows. Candace, when you downplay real issues, systemic racism, inequality, threats to women's rights, that's not just a version. That's erasing people's lives. Candace leaned forward slightly, her hands flat on the table. No, Whoopi. It's refusing to sell victimhood as an identity. It's refusing to tell young black kids they're stuck where they are because of someone else. Joy let out a sharp laugh, her voice rising over the hush that clung desperately to the edge of every word. There you go again. You think you're the only black woman who knows what's best for everyone? Who gave you that crown? Candace's eyes flashed, but her tone stayed cold. Who gave you yours, Joy? You sit here every day telling working people how to feel about problems you've never lived through. Sunny's voice cut in, trying to calm the storm, but only adding to the heat. Candace, don't pretend you know what every working person needs either. You speak from privilege, too. Candace turned her gaze to Sunny, voice softening just enough to make the hush lean in again. Of course I do. But I don't weaponize my privilege. I don't tell poor families that the only thing they can do is blame the system instead of finding a way out. Joy's face turned red, her words sharp as broken glass. You think you're better than the people who struggle. That's what it is. You sit here and wag your finger at people you'll never lift a hand to help. Candace's hands trembled for half a breath, then steadied. You think shouting them down helps them? You think feeding them a script that says they can't make it helps them? I believe they're stronger than that. Whoopi leaned back, arms crossed, her tone low and warning. Careful, Candace. You don't want to turn your back on the people who got you here. Candace turned, her stare hitting Whoopi square in the eyes. What people are those? The ones who applaud when I stay in line? The ones who cheer when I say what makes them feel good about themselves? No, I don't need that. Joy pointed at her across the table, her hand shaking. You're nothing but a puppet for the people who pay you. That's it. You come here, you pretend to care, but you're selling outrage. You're selling division. Candace's answer came quiet, wrapped in steel. I'm not the one who sits here every day reminding people why they should hate each other. That's your lane, Joy. The hush shattered, gasps, phones lifted, a few claps that died under the weight of the moment. Whoopi's eyes narrowed. You think you're untouchable, don't you? Candace's lips barely curved. No, but I know you can't silence me just because I make you uncomfortable. The hush knew then, This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about who got to own the truth at that table. The hush didn't slip back on like a soft blanket this time. It hung there jagged, snagging every breath the audience tried to catch. Joy Behar's glare could have set paper on fire if Candace Owens had been made of anything softer. Sunny Hostin's voice broke the pause, that lawyer calm that could cut bone when she wanted it to. Candace, you keep talking about free speech like you invented it. But you use it as a shield when people call you out for spreading division. You say things that you know will rile people up, then act shocked when they push back. Candace's shoulders tensed, her fingers tapping the table. Rile people up? Or wake them up? Because the only thing I've ever said is that people should look at facts instead of feelings. Joy laughed, the sound dry and sour. Your facts are cherry-picked garbage, and you know it. You come here, drop your little grenades, then skip off to your podcast and tell your fans how brave you were for surviving us. Candace leaned forward, eyes locked on Joy. You're right about one thing. I do survive this show. Because every time you think you're going to humiliate me, you just prove my point. Whoopi Goldberg's brow furrowed, voice steady but tinged with warning. And what point is that, Candace? Candace didn't hesitate. That this table isn't about truth. It's about performance. It's about telling people what they want to hear so they keep tuning in, even if it means lying through your teeth. The audience stirred. A single clap rang out and died instantly under the hush that returned like a vice. Joy's fingers drummed the table so hard her rings clicked like a clock counting down. You are the queen of performance. You sell t-shirts, books, subscriptions. You want to talk about lies? How about all the times you defended people who later turned out to be crooks? Candace's lips twitched, but it wasn't a smile. Show me the politician who's clean, Joy. You won't find one at your fancy fundraisers either. Sunny's eyes narrowed, her tone a scalpel again. Deflecting. You're good at that. But you're not answering the real question. Do you think your words ever hurt the people you claim to speak for? Candace's fingers stopped tapping. She sat back, voice dropping so low the hush had to lean in again. People are hurting already, Sunny. They're hurting because you tell them they're helpless. Because you teach them to blame the world instead of looking in the mirror. Joy's voice spiked. You don't get to tell people what their mirror shows. You've never spent a day in their shoes. Candace turned on her, eyes hard. Neither have you, Joy. But that doesn't stop you from acting like you know what's best for everybody. Whoopi's hands spread on the table, the peacemaker mask slipping just enough to show the iron underneath. All right. You're both taking cheap shots. If you want to talk about truth, Candace, let's talk about it. Do you really believe the things you say about race? About women? About poverty? Or do you just know it'll sell out your shows? Candace's jaw flexed, her voice ablaze. You really want to do this, Whoopi? You really want to stand there with your millions and pretend you're the voice of the poor? The hush cracked, a single gasp, a stifled laugh, and then the audience went dead still. Sunny's mouth opened, but Joy jumped in first, fury in every syllable. How dare you? Whoopi has done more for people than you ever will. Candace's answer was ice. Then why are so many people worse off now than when you started this show? Why are the same problems you talk about on repeat still the same problems 10, 20 years later? Whoopi's eyes narrowed, her voice low and dangerous. You don't get to sit here and talk about problems you profit from, Candace. Candace leaned in, her hand flat on the table. You think you don't profit? You think outrage doesn't keep the lights on here? You think pointing fingers at everyone but yourselves isn't your business model? Joy's hand slammed down. Get off your high horse. You're not here to help. You're here because this makes you famous. Candace didn't flinch. And you're here because it makes you feel powerful to talk down to people like me. Sunny's pen fell to the floor, a sharp snap that the hush caught like a slap. Whoopi shook her head, words dropping like stones. So what's your solution then, Candace? If we're all so wrong, what's right? Tell the audience. Candace looked out at the crowd, her voice strong and cutting through the hush like a knife. Stop letting people tell you you're powerless. Stop buying what makes you a victim. Be bigger than this table. Be bigger than the labels. Joy stood up, pointing right at her. You're not bigger than anything. You're just a puppet. A loud, well-paid puppet. Candace's stare didn't break. Then cut the strings, Joy. Try it. See who's really holding the power when you don't have someone like me to hate. The Hush knew then they hadn't seen the last blow. Not by a long shot.